Chlorofluorocarbon was one of the problems which the world and the global community has overcome. Now another problem has come up, and this time it is mercury pollution, which is hazardous, which is toxic, and its scale is global. And the worldwide scientific community has put their head together to find a solution to that. One of the convention is going to take place in Seoul in a couple of months, where the draft resolution has already been prepared and negotiation on the draft resolutions are going on. At the same time, scientists in their own countries are undertaking aggressive advocacy campaign to get the resolution passed at the IUCN convention. We have today with us Dr. Khwaja Mahmood Ahmad, who is an expert on mercury, and currently he's working on the draft. Khwaja, very warm welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you.
I would straight away ask you, just for the benefit of our viewers, in a couple of lines, would you please tell us what is this and what the problem is?
Thank you very much, Zahir. And before I respond to your question, let me take this opportunity to appreciate the activities of SDTV, which is progressing by leaps and bounds. And it has been very, very helpful, both in support to different advocacy campaign of STPI, but also the research which is going on. And very especially, I have received a lot of emails from our overseas partners regarding the streaming of our programs, which goes worldwide. So my heartfelt congratulations and all the very best. Your question is very valid. Straight away, why mercury? As we know, there are more than 106 known elements in the world. Why this particular element? There are more than one reason for it. Firstly, mercury is extremely toxic, as you said in your initial comments. Secondly, it travels around. And thirdly, and it harms the environment, it harms the ecosystem, and most importantly, it harms the public health, human health. Then beside that, there is a big trade going on mercury. So that also gives it a global context. And when I say that it's toxic and it's harmful to public health, very especially it's harmful to the children who are in a growing age. And it adversely affects the neurological development of children, growing brain and nervous system, and that affects the memory, attention, thinking, sight. And again, this is one of those toxins which has no safe limit. So this is why mercury has received this attention of the public in general and government in particular. So again, another question may come straight away, why we need a global treaty on mercury? Why the problem can't be solved locally or at national level rather than going for a global action? No, again, there are many reasons for that. And first thing first is that since the problem is of global nature, because of its transports, because of its trade, no single country can solve it at its own. The other reason is that since it's traded, it means many governments are involved in it. So a single government action can't improve the trade or can't restrict the trade. We have to have a global action for all the countries vis-a-vis restriction on trade. And then there are certain developed countries which can solve the problem related to mercury because of the resources they have or the better economical conditions they have. Among developing countries, including Pakistan, there is so much lack of capacity and financial resources to take care of this problem.
What are its industrial uses, if any? Because if it is used at such a large scale, then it must have some industrial utility.
No, I appreciate your question because whenever we talk of a problem of a pollutant, the sources becomes very, very important, and the use of that particular substance becomes very, very important. In terms of our own country, the mercury is used in a chloralkali plant. We know that caustic soda is very, very important for industrial development. So in preparation of caustic soda, mercury is used. Then beside that, mercury also has a limited use in cosmetics, in certain drugs. There is also mercury containing vaccine, and these are the intended uses, which gives rise to mercury emissions, mercury releases, which pollute our environment and which also impact the public health. But then there are unintentional uses, or we may say that there are unintentional emissions. For instance, there is this cement industry. It uses fuel, and if it is coal-fired, all those industries or industrial units which are coal-fired, they emit mercury. We know mercury is a liquid. It's the only metal which is in a liquid form. So mercury vaporizes and it goes into air. Another very important use which I forgot to mention, that is intended use, is these a lot of electronic equipment, and then also in mining there are certain equipment in which the mercury is used. It's one of the best insulator, and because it's in a liquid form, it has certain advantages. There are both the intended uses and the unintended uses, and when it comes to the control measures, we need controls in both the areas where where there is an intentional use of mercury and where there are unintended emissions of mercury.
We'll continue our discussion after this short break, so please don't go away.
It's diverse.
It's original.
It's SDTV.
Welcome back. Dr. Saab, what is its relevance to Pakistan?
Our biggest worry is the coal deposit, the Thar coal, which we are going to use for energy purposes. Because as I said earlier, coal contains mercury as impurities.
That is the future use. Right now, it is being used at a very large scale.
Well, right now, there are certain cement industry which are coal-based. Beside that, there are also small-scale industry which use coal. So the thing is, our concern is that we are going to use the Thar coal deposits, which is a huge deposits. So our government should be very, very careful when they negotiate this treaty, so that they do not get such restrictions on themselves which make restriction on the use of our Thar coal.
Yeah, right now you can give them advice from this forum if you may, and you have already given. But one thing is, it's contrary to the path which lead to success. The world is coming back to coal. After Fukushima in Japan, Germany has shut down its nuclear power stations, and they are coming back to coal, although they are taking certain measures for pollution. India is on coal. So coal seems to be the future of the world unless the renewable come to a stage where they become effective.
No, you're very right. And I think this is really a thorny or contentious issue. But then you got to see this issue, use of coal, in terms of its use in a developing country and its use in a developed country. As long as you can apply control measure to a fuel and you turn environmentally unfriendly fuel into an environmentally friendly fuel, which we call green fuel, there is no problem. Now, when the developed countries use the coal, they may go for certain pre-treatment of the coal so that before it is used, the impurities like sulfur and like mercury is removed from it. Or their combustion process is such that either sulfur and mercury doesn't go into combustion, and if at all it goes into the combustion, its emission is
trapped.
Or its emission is trapped. Now, for this sort of green use of coal, you need lot of technology and lot of investment and lot of finance. The other thing is that it's the quality of the coal. Some coal is of a higher quality. And when we say that a coal of a higher quality, it means it has minimum impurities.
Pakistani coal is lignite.
No, in Pakistani coal there is a bit of problem because it has high sulfur content.
Lignite, yeah, obviously.
And if it has a high sulfur content, it's very expected that it would have a high mercury content as arsenic content. So which means that where developed country, because of having the advantage of a better technology and resources, even if their coal is of a poor quality, they may use it in such a form that the emissions of mercury or sulfur dioxide do not come out, or if they come out, they are well trapped. But then in countries like China, in countries like India, in countries like Pakistan, the coal deposits are very poor. But then unfortunately, the energy deficiency has become so alarming that we have come back to this source of fuel which we have not been using it. So as long as we can use a fuel in an environmentally sound way, there is no problem.
So if I say that primarily the problem of mercury is attached to the use of coal uses, so it is an energy related problem at the moment. Are you saying this?
Well, certainly, I mean, those countries who are dependent on coal for energy, that's their primary problem. For instance, in Pakistan, the mercury is really not a very alarming issue. But if we start using thar coal, it could become an alarming issue. And the way mercury use is at the moment, and there is not very much high use of mercury either. To the inventory report which was prepared by Government of Pakistan in collaboration with other stakeholders, our annual mercury inputs is between 37,000 to 11,000 kilograms, which is a very, very small amount.
So if we just bring it down, use of mercury is primarily a development issue. No. I mean, you have to use energy, and the China and India have taken their case to Rio, and they are telling United States, look, when you were developing, you were spewing that much carbon, and now you are asking us to be, so we will not be compatible. And the competitiveness, if it has to be maintained, then we have to use this energy and all, and other argument as well. So you are putting this use of mercury, or not using mercury, or in a tray where other greener fuel and the similar argument is given?
Yeah, the thing is that any development issue or any development action has some consequences. Why we talk of sustainable development? Because we want to equate the economy with the environment and the social issues. The same is the case with mercury issue. On one hand, certainly it is related to development issues, because as we have been discussing, we need coal for energy, and we need energy for well-being of our people and for development of our industry and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, if we are using a resource like mercury or coal in a way that it affects the human health, then it becomes a health issue. And if it impacts the environment, then it becomes an environmental issue. And as we know, our basics of sustainable development, that we have to keep a balance between the economy and the environment and the social aspect of it. So though it is related to a development issue, but more important are the health issue and also the social issues.
So you are giving advice to the government of Pakistan and other governments in poor and developing countries to come up with an idea which should allow them, give them handle to use coal, rather than to come up with a draft which puts restriction on the use of coal.
This hue and cry about the mercury has come because of the use of coal in the recent past. Huge amount of coal in the recent past. Now, whenever there is environmental issues which relate to air, it becomes the global issue. We need a treaty which has such restrictions so that if at all coal is used, it is used for energy, it is used in an environment friendly way. And we have the minimum possible impact of coal used for energy on the human health, environment and ecosystem.
Here we take a short break. Please don't go away.
It's diverse.
It's original.
It's SDTV.
Doctor, before the break, we were talking about this mercury as an input in energy through the use of coal and other. So obviously it's a global development agenda at the moment, because there are developed countries and there are underdeveloped and developing countries. And developing countries need energy, which is obviously not as clean as many of the developed countries are using. So, and this is the reason that Rio 20 Plus conference had difficulties in adopting green energy when it came to the environment and climate change. So, do you think this world is once again is going in the same direction?
When this mercury took the global attentions, UNEP started its activity by going through a very exhaustive study. And this study took quite some time. And on the basis of this study, UNEP decided that this mercury issue is a global issue. It is impacting ecosystem, environment, and human health. So we need a global action on it. And as a follow-up to that decision was that an international negotiating committee was constituted. We call it INC. Kyrgyzstan has a mercury mine, and they mine mercury. So they have to protect that source of income or economy for them. Similarly, we need light bulbs, which has a small amount of mercury there. Similarly, there are already mercury-based chlor industry which are functioning. You can't shut them down immediately. Usually, what happens is that the negotiations moves between the two parties. The north are the developed part of the world, and the south and the developing part of the world.
So it is once again north-south.
Both having their own priorities in terms of the economy, trade, public health, and so on and so forth. When the negotiation starts, the developed world, to my observation and to my experience, are more concerned, more vigorous, more stingy, more strict in developing the standards, in developing the controls, and putting in provisions which are very, very strong. Now, when this part of a treaty is negotiated, one does not see as much enthusiasm from the developing world or countries belonging to the developing world. So once the House agrees to the control measures, both in terms of emissions, trade, processes, so on and so forth, the questions come to the compliance. And when it comes to the compliance, our negotiations get divided into two groups. Because where the developed world wants a very strong compliance provisions, the developing world agrees to compliance subject to technical and financial support. And that is where the stalemate of negotiation starts. And then it goes on and on and on. But then fortunately, of three conventions in which I was involved, we were able to get through with it in the Stockholm Convention on POPs, the persistent organic pollutants, but we didn't meet the same level of success when it comes to strategic approach to international chemical management.
I can see in this badge zero HG. Zero, see, resembles very close to a jargon which is in Pakistan, zero hunger. And if this is zero mercury, so it clearly says that there is no safe level of use.
Yeah. Actually, SDPI is a very active member of many international networks which are working on different issues related to chemicals. Zero Mercury Working Group is one such organization. Beside that, International Society of Doctor for Environment and Heavy Metal Group of International POPs Elimination Network, IFAN, they are also working on the mercury issues. SDPI is an active member of these and many other networks and coalition of NGOs, civil societies. Now, this one is from Zero Mercury Working Group, and what it means is that we must work with an approach in which mercury is totally eliminated from the world. The mercury use, mercury production, mercury mining, anything to do with the mercury in products like electronic products, it should be eliminated. So the Zero Mercury Working Group approach is not a minimum level of mercury use, but no use of mercury at all. That's why they say zero mercury.
So it's not workable, you think?
If one works for a higher level, even if it does not reach to that set higher level, it does seems to achieve much more than if it has not kept a higher level. So I think it's a very right approach.
Let's find out what the global community is doing. What is a draft? What does the draft say? how it puts, do you think we still need rich to support poor to carry forward the process?
Actually, Tahir, with this conventional treaty, it's quite.
It would be a binding. Or you are pushing for this?
We are pushing for legally binding, but it has to be seen whether what sort of final decision is taken by the governments, because basically it's the governments who decide the treaty or the different elements of treaty or provisions of treaty. And let me just briefly update you a little how position stands now. For instance, US, from the very beginning, US position is that there is a strong base that we must have a legally binding instrument on mercury elimination. On the other hand, the African group, Eastern European group, Canada, Japan and Nigeria, they also
Canada and Japan as well.
And Canada, Japan and Nigeria, they support an immediate action, but not necessarily towards a legally binding instrument. On the other hand, the European Union, it favored development of a legally binding instrument on mercury. Then there are also other countries who also support a legally binding instrument on mercury, like Australia, Brazil, Uruguay and many other countries. But then there is a strong opposition to a legally binding instrument from India, because they do not consider that legally binding instrument on mercury is necessary, especially for non-intentional releases. And by the non-intentional releases, as we discussed earlier also, for instance, the releases coming out of combustion, and the releases coming out of industrial processes and so on and so forth. China favor a gradual process. What the China is suggesting is that even if we go for elimination of mercury, it should be a gradual process rather than straight away we go for the total elimination of mercury. Now, our own country, Pakistan, it kept a low profile in the negotiations, because our priority environment problem is not mercury. And as I said earlier, there is not much use of mercury in the country, or there is not much industry based on industry. So it was the right position by Pakistan to keep a low profile. But it did support China that if at all we want to eliminate mercury, it should be a gradual process. The global civil society, including SDPI and our leading partners like Zero Mercury Working Group, International Society of Doctors for Environment, International Population Network, Global Alternative Environmental, Global Incineration Alternative, and many others. They are pleading. They, as a civil society, representative of civil society, they are pleading that the national government must support and agree to a legally binding instrument.
Its continuous use can cause social problems, obviously. So are you saying also that through this convention that the rich and developed countries should have something in terms of corporate social responsibility towards the southern countries?
Tahir, the problem is the corporate responsibility comes through the individual government. Even if
government should make it mandatory.
Even if there is a provision, even if there is a obligatory mandatory provision in the agreement signed by a government, still its implementation rests with the government. And the developing countries, they need certain support before they could comply with the provision. And once they take a provision to the industry first response is of the compensation. Okay, we can change the process, but then this much how the process is going to cost. So this corporate responsibility, it is to be implemented by the government in the developing countries. And this corporate responsibility, again, the industry wants to live. If it can afford, it would be doing it. If it cannot afford, they would look for subsidies, they would look for support. And the developing countries do not have priority funding towards the environmental pollution control or to help industry to curb down their pollution. So, that's sort of problem. And if you let me add, that is the thorny issue which I have seen, which comes up at the last stages of the international negotiations for a treaty. The developing countries insist, take a position for the provision of technological and financial support. And the developed countries, they have other reasons not to 100% comply with that request and comply with that needs, with funding and so on and so forth.
So as one of the eminent scientists from third world and southern countries, especially from Pakistan, who has taken part in different round of negotiations and basically participating in the preparation of the draft which is there and tabled, how much you are confident that in the coming IUCN convention this draft would be adopted and assume a form of a treaty and that would be there?
Well, I think we have a lot to do, because
before it is accepted.
Exactly. And the other thing is there is a time constraint, because as per the directive of the UNEP, it has to be completed in 5 meetings, and we have already done away with 4 meetings. We have one last meeting which is left, and the status of the draft treaty at the end of INC 4 was that there was little progress, as was termed by some
little or a little
sluggish process, and most of the treaty is still within brackets. There were some noticeable progress with certain issues. For instance, this small scale gold mining issue, which again in the small scale gold mining mercury is used. It's used historically over the years. It's been used. So there is some progress with that one. Also there is some progress with the contaminated site, and also there is some process with the best available environmental technology which are to be used. But then there are also some issues which has not been even taken up. For instance, mercury in products is a big issue both for the developing country and the developed country. Not a single product which contains mercury has been taken up. What I mean to say is that, for instance, there are manometers, there are thermometers, so on and so forth. Despite 4 meetings has been completed or carried out, there is not one product taken for a decision whether this is to be used or not to be used. So there are problems like that one. And then in the INC 4, there was a very strong move by some governments as well as request by the civil society to introduce a very specific health clause in the negotiations, in the treaty. No, again, there could not be a progress on that one. There was support to introduce a health class by China, by Latin America, and by African countries. But then there was some other positions taken by countries like New Zealand, US, and EU, the European Union. The basic need, the objective of a treaty is to protect the health. Now, if health is at all important, especially the health of the future generation, then the country has to give up their strong position.
The present,
come to a compromise.
The present generation has to live responsibly.
Exactly.
Obviously, it's very important how STPI is contributing into the whole issue.
Yeah. Well, over the last so many years, STPI has been playing a very active role on the issues of chemicals, both nationally, regionally, and at the international level. We have been very active with our partner networks on the POPs issue, and also on strategic approach to chemical management and safety and health issues. Not only SDPI is giving all technical support to our government and provide inputs for our country position in these negotiations, but we have also been involved in awareness raising and also in development of inventory. So SDPI thought of putting up a motion so that it could be considered at the IUCN Congress along with other motions. And what we are asking the Congress is to resolve that a legally binding global instrument with an objective to protect wildlife, ecosystem, and human health from mercury, recognizing particularly the vulnerable populations. Then We also want the INC members, government representative, to support an effective measures to reduce and eliminate mercury use, a mandatory national implementation plan for ensuring effective realization of the mercury, and civil society and other stakeholders' active role in the development and implementation of the same. We also ask for support of the INC negotiators to include mandatory obligations to identify and characterize contaminated sites, and also lastly, earliest possible development of the treaty. We would not like it to get delayed beyond February, with effective and enforceable treaty compliance and provisions. Now, this motion of our, it was supported by organizations in Pakistan, and it has been approved for submission and presentation at the Congress for the consideration of the IUCN members. And we have also been receiving support from many countries, but we need much more support. And through your SD TV, I would like to request the listeners and the organizations to provide us institutional support for this motion to be get approved and resolved at the IUCN Congress. And for that, I request them to visit our website www.sdpi.org, where the details are provided, both of the motion itself and then how to support it.
Thank you very much. Mercury is a poison. It stands out, speaks itself, and it stares in the eyes of our future generations. For the benefit of our future generations, we have to act responsibly at this moment, especially the corporations. They should consider corporate social responsibility and take some eminent action on that. With that, thank you very much.